Männer, es war ein langer Krieg. Ihr habt tapfer und stolz für euer Vaterland gekämpft. Seid eine besondere Truppe, die ineinander.
Hey everyone, this is the Hydra Hut. Let's talk about Batman Deathblow, After the Fire. This is by Brian Azzarello, Lee Bermejo, and Tim Bradstreet. Brian is writing, Lee is doing the penciling, Tim is doing the inking, and I'll have to open up the cover to get you who the color is, but we'll get there in a second. So what this is this is basically a combo book of Michael Cray, Deathblow, and Batman, except Michael Cray is actually dead. It is suggested that he died while trying to solve a case, and now 10 years later, Batman is also trying to solve this case. First of all, the reason Michael's dead has nothing to do with what's in the book. They don't actually ever mention what kills him. Going by the dialogue and how it's all presented, I would say it's safe to assume that this is pre-Deathblow the book, i.e. before he took on the right hand of Satan, because a background character essentially mentions his wife and how lucky he is to be able to wake up to such a beautiful woman. But in current timeline, Gabby would actually be dead. And it would make sense for this time period everybody to think Michael Cray is dead because of the happenings at the end of Deathblow. Also, if you haven't read Deathblow or Deathblow 2, it's by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi, and it is fantastic. Highly recommend it. Definitely read it. It's awesome. Michael Cray is an IO soldier. He's basically a super spec ops assassin, and he has to take on the minions of hell, and it's fantastic, and everybody should read it. And this is the same Michael, not the current day Michael Cray, which you might have seen come out, who looks like a soy boy, but the real Michael Cray. And we get a lot of nice, very, very true to the character storyline with him. And Batman is fantastic. They do a great job handling him as well. Plus this art, Lee Bermejo. If you guys have Batman Noel, then you should recognize that name. Or if you've seen Dark Philly's review of Batman Noel, then this should definitely ring a bell, because he's the guy behind that masterpiece. And his art is just... And one kind of cool thing I thought about or one neat thing about this book, is the way Gotham is portrayed is very, very similar to the way Sean Gordon Murphy portrays it in White Knight, in the art, not like what's going on and stuff, but how the artwork is portrayed. It just kind of reminded me of it. This is much older, and it was probably just a choice by this colorist. I think White Knight's colorist is Hollingsworth. This guy's name is different. You guys will see what I mean. It's a 3-part series, not super thick. A lot of words, a lot of story, but it keeps you very, very pulled in, and the scenery and art is fantastic. I'm only going to cover the first book. I'm not going to get too in-depth. I just want you to see how awesome this really is. Alright, first off, yeah, see what I mean? This right here. It's just very reminiscent of SGM. Anyway, colorist is Grant Goleash, or Goleash. The inkers is actually Tim Bradstreet's the main one, but apparently Mick Gray, Richard... What the fuck is on my finger? Is that soot? Alright, it's gone. Soot. I was going to say that was soot. Anyway, a couple different inkers. Even Lee helped out with the inking. I don't know if it was that Lee didn't have enough time to do it all, or if Tim got bogged down by all the freaking lines that Lee does, but yeah. Moving on. This is actually a little bit of foreshadowing for the story and the duality between Batman and Michael Cray. I actually kind of like this. Plus, it's a cool picture. Look, clips dropping. I'm pretty sure he's rocking SIGs. They do a great job on the guns in this. And Michael. Michael looks pretty sick, too. They're pretty spot on for the way Brandon and Jim Lee had him done. So we start off in Gotham City with a nice full spread panel. It's broken up into 3 parts to give us a little bit of timeline through our dialogue. Chinatown, Gotham City, 10 years ago. Of course, this is setting the scene. The show we're in the past, because in this book, Michael's dead. So any bit with Michael is going to be done in the past. And of course, this is telling us this is definitely going to be a Batman book. So, as we set the scene in Chinatown, outside Gotham City, we get a nice shot of Michael. He's commenting on the rain. They're basically just testing out their sound gear and small talking on story and what's happening here. Right now, they're trying to wait for a mark. They're going to follow him down, question him, get some information. Michael, being IO, Spec Ops, he was sent out to assassinate somebody, or so we can assume. That's basically what he does. And the thing about Michael is, he's never failed. Even when he had to kill, well, I guess this hasn't happened yet, but Michael's never failed a job. He doesn't fail. That's not his thing. He is the epitome of a super soldier. It's awesome. They're bouncing back and forth about the weather and their mission, which is nice. It's a very realistic dialogue, which you would, I mean, I've never been in this situation, but it's what I would expect 2 well-trained killers would be doing while they're just hanging out in the rain. As we're moving on, we see the mark coming outside of the building. They're still filling us in on the storyline through simple dialogue, and we get these really nice shots, some night vision camera shots showing us our mark. Look at this art. Look at it! Great panel breakups to demonstrate everything that's going on. As we see Michael moving into action, he does his signature face paint maneuver, giving him the his Deathblow signature face, and he moves into action. And so basically he follows this guy into some seedy hotel inside of Chinatown. He runs into a couple of rooms as he's checking the place out, trying to find where this dude ran off to. Ends up spotting a little old lady peering through the door in a hallway. She kind of suggests which way he should go to find the guy he's looking for. And that's when we see Michael bust into this room, startle some fools. And I'll just go ahead and read this. So Michael busts through the door. There's this dude smoking a cigarette, drinking a beer. Him and his partner are watching TV. Classic 90s TV, guys. I bet most of you don't even know this shape. Well, anybody watching my channel probably does. One guy laying down has a question mark. He's clearly confused. And we see, no, don't shoot. Don't shoot, don't shoot. Obviously, they're speaking a different language. That's what these always suggest. They don't give us a little key telling us that. They just assume that we've read enough comics to understand that on our own. The guy tries to... Michael tells him to get on the ground. One of the guys is still telling him, no, don't shoot. The other guy grabs a gun, pulls him hostage, and Michael puts them both down because they're really not who he's looking for. Moves along to his next spot. The guy who he is looking for clearly heard the gunshots. And is getting out of Dodge. We then kind of change scenes, basically, to somebody who's going to be showing up throughout the book. This guy here in the red jacket. And this is actually a little foreshadowing hint as to who this is going to be. So, Gotham City, 5 minutes from now. As you can see, we're back in the present. We get in some radio stations. He's clicking through various different talk radios. Not interested. We see some flames on his red jacket. Smoking a cigarette. And we get some music. I'm not going to sing this, but anybody familiar with industrial should recognize this. And that's basically some foreshadowing as to who this guy is going to be. He's also I think, driving a Fiero. That's either a Toyota Supra or he's actually... Nah, that's probably a Toyota Supra. He's not rocking a Fiero. No, there's no way he's rocking a Fiero. As the scene moves along, we see the car pulling into a toll station, toll booth. My state actually doesn't have these. The only time I ever saw a toll booth on the road was when I went to Texas. So if I hadn't have gone to Texas, I probably wouldn't have any idea what's going on here. I imagine most of the world doesn't have to worry about that because they don't live out in the middle of podunk nowhere. So as the familiar red car passes through, we get the car behind them. Family is doing its typical fighting, brother and sister arguing, the dad's aggressively telling them to shut up. And then he notices something and is clearly startled. Gets out of the vehicle. The family's wondering what he sees, what's happening, and that's when he sees this charred, burned, crispy hand with a familiar calling card. If you're not familiar with Deathblow and Michael Cray, this might not ring a bell. And if you're not, then you might still recognize something similar that popped up earlier, having to do with Michael. And we'll find out what this card is later on. We again jump scenes. You can say let's go to a black and white. We're actually still in the same timeline though. This is just the lighting. They're in a dance club. They're in a nightclub. It's very 60s feeling, 50s feeling, but I'm pretty sure it's just, you know, what rich people do. We're getting some banter back and forth as Bruce Wayne is basically talking to his company about stocks and the importance of his company and what they have to do. It's real kind of small talk, but it sets up the scene for the story to move along, and they start filling us in on how Bruce Wayne sells security. And I mean, most of us already know that, but if you're not familiar with the character, this is all very handy. Good filler information. The nice thing about it is it's not exciting, but it's not boring. It doesn't make you want to stop reading, and there's lots of stuff to look at in the background. As the party moves along, Bruce decides to leave because of a crime that's happened, I believe. And he's basically saying his goodbyes, greeting everybody. We get some some very interesting looking people. And then we see this guy in the background, and you might recognize the jacket. As he grows closer, he becomes a little bit more familiar. We see the cigarette, the sunglasses, this jacket. Bruce is talking to a butler, basically about his company and why he's leaving and whatnot. And that's when this cocky-looking fool in the background slams into him. Bruce, being the gentleman, of course, says, "Pardon me." This guy takes a long, slow drag off his cigarette, blows it in Bruce's face, and just walks off. Bruce calls him a jerk, and that's basically the end of the interaction between that guy. Bruce leaves the party, heads on home. He starts talking to Alfred via their comms, asking about one of his where his Malibu is, where one of his cars is. And Alfred tells him one of the safe houses that has a card, some suits, various bat gear for him. So that's where our boy Bruce heads. While he's going there, Alfred is filling him in on some crimes that Bruce learned about while he was at that dinner party. Oops. And then here we get a scene jumps over to a pawn shop where we see a guy trying to sell some VCRs to some awesome caricature of a freaking pawn shop owner. I'm just gonna go ahead and skip past this little bit because it's mostly just filler information. and story, added storyline. Plus, I don't want to ruin what actually goes on in this part. But it all leads up to a crime scene where we find Bruce. And he's getting filled in by Gordon. Okay. Alright. So, I thought there was going to be a clear marker, but I don't want to keep going on this and ruin it. Essentially what's going to happen is a very intricate detective story, and you just need to read it. Hail Hydra, baby.